This is the BetterForms interface. We have some file assets that we can include. So this is somewhat of a content management. This supports numerous types, text, logos, I don't know, anything you could think of that you'd want in assets. You have a server level where you can list your servers. I don't know how much I should share, but let's go ahead and go through the process of creating like a new app. Um, they've changed this too. So this is not the approach it used to be. Uh, you can now select a template or rebuild from an existing app. And they have actually like tailored tagged selections to what's unique about each section of development. So if you were trying to build, let's say, a progressive web app, right, which is something you could download on your phone, which I think BetterForms kind of showcased at Claris Engage. They had their own app there. They were using that progressive web app approach, right? Which essentially creates a web app of your app for isolation on your phone. Newer methods. But let's say we just wanted to start with, we'll pick this one here. It's the multi-page application. Probably standard. They're even rating now how hard this would be, as well as providing like details of what's included in this library or this template. And they've already included the CDN for Tailwind. So if we use this template, we can give this app a name. We'll say DevCast test. We'll just say DevCast. DevCast. We hopefully can. Well, we'll delete all this afterwards. I'm just gonna pick Cedar. Did I miss something?
Does
Oh,
say
no
that no
domain
domains
names.
available. Yeah.
Yeah, let's pick this other one. They have noted that, and this is in the documentation as well, that there are so many people using BetterForms that their native BetterForms domain is full. So now they have an additional space for building apps. It's the clientportal.cloud. But you can see it's deploying this entire environment, and kind of gives you some details about what's been set up for you. The development environment is here. We can go here. Once it finishes, it takes a minute for this to initialize. Probably this is why this is here. It says it's updating. So they're actually building this space in one of their, I think they're using AWS, and they're essentially creating like a serverless, I want to say serverless process that runs for this environment. I could be wrong on that.
An important side note for some people anyway would be that the data never resides at BetterForms. They're not storing your data at all. The data never exists except on your server. So I know there have been a few situations when I've been talking to clients where they've had a concern about their data going somewhere else, but the data is being pushed and pulled from our clients or our FileMaker server. It's not going to FM BetterForms' server.
So this is the standard the standard pages. So they have everything kind of divided out here. There's these are the pages directly that you work with. In this case, it looks like a registration form. Right. Everything's in JSON. So if you have a good understanding of JSON, this structure may look familiar to you. Some of it may be gibberish, depending on like some sections. So that's why like HTML and CSS is like important. All these things that you see right here are style classes being applied to an element. In this case, this element is an HTML element, and they provide a way for us to kind of open up these independently and have kind of a more IDE approach, right? But all this is a div with an empty class. There's nothing in here, and it says, "Tell us about you."
Really good illustration of even just up to this point of the advantage of WebDirect. You don't need to know what a div class is with WebDirect. There's no question that BetterForms, if in a progression of tools, WebDirect being the easiest one to use, BetterForms is easier to use than a full stack environment because it frees you up from all the backend stuff, but it does not free you up from you really, to be effective with it, you really do have to have good understanding of HTML, CSS, JSON, probably some JavaScript to get to more advanced stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Really around the JSON for like as it involves the data model. So like one example I'll show you is you have the option of like including a dev data model. In this case, they've already have one here pre-generated. It's called states, right? So like if you wanted to use dev data to test like a scenario in your HTML you're trying to write, and you wanted to render that, well, I'm going to toggle on dev data, and we know that this is from JSON. You have a states object or array inside of our object. So if we just added, and this is view syntax inside of HTML, so their library supports view, which uses handlebars. We can include states, right? And states is an array. So let's grab the first item, and I think let's go with name. And I think I'm missing, so everything's declared inside of the model. Oops. So just like that, we've just added, tell us about you, Alabama, pulling from the actual data that's, this would essentially, you could mock up an entire data set that you would have, that you would create in FileMaker, right? And if you could imagine what you could create in FileMaker as JSON and send it to the front end, anything you can do that way, all of that is possible to manipulate on the front end, right? Given the tools that they're providing you. And that's true about all the instances. I mean, they've even built out entire snippets that are elements or tables, things that you probably include in your web app anyways. They've been pre-built, right? You can just leverage an entire component that's already been built for you and throw it into your web app. So you're not entirely starting from scratch. The same is true as if you go and do full stack, you can leverage other libraries and things like that. But they're not doing anything different. It's just this is all kind of tailored towards like the FileMaker approach. Right. And I feel like they're very FileMaker focused. So if your data is in FileMaker already, it makes sense to use a tool like this versus a full stack web app. But if your data is not in FileMaker, you're probably considering a full stack.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also some full stack. There's obviously some full stack considerations if you've got a situation that's enterprise scale. If you're dealing with a web application that needs to handle hundreds or thousands of concurrent connections per second or something like that, ultimately FileMaker BetterForms is reading and writing data to the FileMaker database server, and it you are subject to some limits there. And so if you're trying to create a web application that has to handle truly significant loads, then you're probably looking at full stack as well.
Yeah.
Russell, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that a cool piece of having this deployment stage or development stage is you have access to their dev tools. So I think it was there a second ago, but when you're looking at your dev link, yeah, you have this developer tool, so you can have access to your model object at any point, so you can see live kind of what your data is at any moment when you're in dev.
Yeah. So if you think of this like as your empty canvas, right? This is a form you're going to load empty probably to some user, and we can type things in and actually see them populating the data model here, right? So like they've divided this into the application, right? And the application contains keys for name first, name last, and that's what we filled in. But you can control the structure of that. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like the application, if you defined it differently and you had a different set of rules for your, the way you wanted to manage your data, this could be like application and then a sub object, right? That's tell us about you. So then you have sections and then you define like each one of those fields. So you have complete flexibility of how you want to manage the data and send the data back.
And it's all in
which I think is pretty
FileMaker.
cool. Yeah, and
it's all done in FileMaker, which makes it even easier for FileMaker developers because you're doing it there. Makes it all.
Yeah, it's all JSON coming back into FileMaker. So
Yeah,
you manipulate it however you want. Yeah,
which is, I mean, that's the primary goal, right? Like when you're building an integration with FileMaker, all you really want is that data to be pushed around. You know, I've done the integrations with like WordPress and Wix and Squarespace, and there's still a level of disconnect between getting your FileMaker data back and forth. But this really does make it nice and simple.